All right. Greetings, Red Lake parents and guardians. My name is Mr. B, and I'm here to read the next section of our wonderful One School, One Book project, A Whole New Ball Game. All right, we're starting in the amphitheater. To end the week, Mr. Acevedo held T3 outside in the amphitheater. He read us a short story about this kid who had the same first and last name, Murphy. The kid had the worst luck in the world. He also had really bad stage fright, but he agreed to be in a skip for the drama club because he really liked a girl. I sat in the first row on the end between between Red and Mr. Goldberg. When we arrived, Mr. Goldberg was emptying the garbage cans next to the playground. He decided to join us. As Mr. Acevedo read, he walked up and down the steps and back and forth along the rows. He hopped onto the benches and tiptoed around us, twisting and turning and dipping like a dancer. When there were only a couple of pages left, when he got to the scene where Murphy was bumbling through the skit, he walked over to the jungle gym and read from the deck at the top of the climbing wall. Then when finished, he closed the book and bowed like a conductor in front of an orchestra. Everyone applauded. Some of the kids stood and cheered. I did. I love that kind of stuff in school. Next chapter is called Double Teamed. This turkey burger is delicious, Rep's mom, Red said. I bumped his shoulder. You say everything she makes is delicious. Everything is. I agree, Mom Burger pounded him across the table. Quit playing with your food, you two, I said. We were on the stools in the kitchen having dinner. Turkey burgers on challah bread with sweet potato fries, just like we always when Red stayed over for dinner on Saturdays. Red was also sleeping over because Suzanne had to work the night shift at the hospital. Up until a few months ago, Red never slept over. He only slept in his own bed. But back in June, he said he wanted to stay over one night. And it went fine. Although it definitely didn't hurt that we played Xbox until the sun came through the basement window. I'm looking forward to finally meeting Mr. Acevedo, Mom said. That's not until next Sunday, I said. You're looking forward to it already? I half smiled. I think someone needs a little extra excitement in her life. We have a game next Saturday, Red said. A home game against O'Malley at 9 o'clock. We have to be there at 8:30. That's when I'm meeting him, Mom said. Same with Suzanne. You get to see all his tattoos, Red said, swiveling. The butterfly one on his leg is so cool. It's all different colors, red, green, yellow, blue, black. He has this other tattoo that says, we play Millwood on Wednesday, I interrupted. An away game at Millwood on Wednesday, Red added. Millwood's the best team in the league. I popped a couple fries into my mouth. It could get ugly. Still with the attitude, Mom said. I'm just being realistic. Coach Acevedo keeps guaranteeing we're going to win, but I don't know. We only have 5 games left, and 2 of them are against Millwood. And an away game at Millwood on Wednesday, October 2nd, Red said, swiveling faster. A home game against Voight on Saturday, October 5th, and an away game against Rolling Hills on Monday, October 14th. An away game at Lockport on Tuesday, October 15th. A home game against Millwood on Saturday, October 19th. Mom tapped my plate. You up to date with the project? I nodded. Is that a yes? Yes, Mom. You checked the webpage. She looked at both of us. We didn't reply. You need to, she said. Your outline is due, and you have another conference coming up. Mr. Acevedo posted a checklist for it. This is where you say you wished all your teachers were this organized. Don't be so fresh, she pointed to a fry. I leaned across the island and tried to bite it, but she pulled it back. You're writing your page next week. Right after the conference, Mom said. This project is moving quickly. You don't want to fall behind. You told me a gazillion times, I said. Xander McDonald and I finished our outline, Red said. Xander and I have 14 note cards. Miss Yvonne helped us. Miss Yvonne's coming into class again, Mom said. She started doing push-in. Red shook his head. I see her out of class. We had ELA on the playground the other day, I said. She worked with Red and X then. Mr. Acevedo's making changes to the project, Red said. He's telling us what they are on Monday. I'm sure he has something to do with back to school night. I heard some of the parents were relentless. She motioned to my plate. You done? I piled mine on top of hers. Red popped a last fry into his mouth and then added his to the stack. As soon as we're done cleaning up from dinner, Mom said, heading to the compost, we're going over your folder. Why? I half whined. Because I said so. I don't need to give you a reason. I let out a puff. Sometimes my teacher mom needed to be a little less hands-on. I want to look at your project folder too, Red, she said. Thanks, Rip's mom. I bumped his shoulder again. You really aren't normal. He bumped me back and then started swiveling again. After we check your folder, Mom said as she scraped a plate, we're going to do something about all those clothes on your floor. What are we going to do about them? Stop showing off in front of Red, she shot me a look. You're being fresh again. I brushed my locks off my forehead and let out another puff. I know your room doesn't have clothes all over it, she said to Red. Maybe you can help Rip clean his room. No thanks, Rip's mom. I love Red. He's funny. The next chapter is called Shaking Things Up. That's 156. Back on Friday, we ended the week in the AMP. Today, we started the week in the AMP. We interrupt room 208 for a special bulletin, Mr. Officeado said. He stood with the leg on the front bench and his iPad on his knee. I need to make a couple of changes to the project. I have to shake things up a little bit. I don't understand, Piper said. That's because I haven't explained it yet. This week, you and your partner will be writing a persuasive essay. It's an additional writing assignment, a short one. You need to follow a particular format, he paused. Hopefully, this will please some of your parents. He nodded to Avery, whose hand was up. Can I say something, she said. Is it about this writing assignment? Yes and no, she said. Mr. Acevedo looked at her sideways. Then I'll say maybe. I'm not the only one who thinks this, she said. Can I use the T word? If you must. Mr. Acevedo placed the iPad on the bench. I checked Red. He sat at the end of the second row next to Mr. Goldberg, who joined us again, even though we weren't having T3. Red was already hunched forward and pinky thumbing his legs. What's on your mind, Miss Goodman? Mr. Officeado said, stepping in front of the amp. You do test prep. We do test prep every day in math. You do. The third and fourth graders do test prep every day in ELA. They do. She rolled her eyes. The fifth graders at all the other schools do test prep. How are we going to do well on the tests if we don't know how to take them? We're learning, Mr. Acevedo said. Mr. toed the sand with his sneaker. We're not learning the questions on the test. We're learning, he said. We're learning more than just the answer to some questions on a test. We're learning. He stopped mid-sentence and pulled back his hair. Show of hands, how many people feel the same way as Mrs. Goodman? Be honest. A few hands went up. These kids really care about this test. Then a few more, and a few more, and mine. We're learning, Mr. Acevedo said. He drew a circle in the air with his fingers, but we're learning in a way that doesn't stifle creativity. And if you don't know what stifle means, look it up. I didn't know what stifle meant, but from the sound of it, I didn't want it happening to me. Down the row, Red swayed from side to side. I understand I need to make adjustments, Mr. Acevedo said, kicking at the sand. Your parents have made that perfectly clear, but I'm not turning room 208 into a test prep mill, no matter how much noise anyone makes. I guarantee that. Personally, I like this guy. It was the first time I'd ever heard Mr. Acevedo speak with an edge. I checked Red again. He hunched over, swaying and sweaty, and wearing his old man face. I checked Red again, hunched over, swaying, we learn best when we're having fun, Mr. Acevedo said, keeping the tone. We learn best when we're doing. That's how we learn how to think. Learning how to answer specific questions for a test, that's not learning. I don't know what that is. Mr. Acevedo pulled back his hair again and looked around. He made eye contact with a few of us. When you teach to a test, he said, softening his words, you program the test taker to respond to a question in a narrow way. When you teach a real skill, when you learn a real skill, the person learning the skill is able to apply that skill in all different contexts. He stepped to Avery. Did that answer your question, Miss Goodman? Whatever, she said. For what it's worth, he said, tapping her armrest. That was a healthy interruption. I'm glad you brought that up. Now let's get back to where we were, the new persuasive essay. That's the first change to the project. The second change takes place in 2 weeks. Each group will now be presenting to the class. We're going to have an oral present. No, Red shouted. He stood up and shook his head violently. No, I can't. It's too much. It's too much. He covered his head with his arms. No. He took off. The next chapter is called I Survived. I tore out of the playground and headed for the gym door, where Red ran into the school. I darted across the gym and through the cafeteria, but there was no sign of him. I charged down the main hall Slow down, Mr. Irving, Miss Walden called from her desk by the announcement monitor. Did Wren come by? I asked, speed walking up. Is everything all right? She pointed down the K1 hallway. He just went upstairs. I bolted past without answering and headed for the staircase. I pulled open the door, two at a time to the steps, and then bounded into the second floor hall. No Red. I headed straight for room 208. That's where I found him. He stood by the back table in front of Brian's seat. He had taken down the silver toolbox with the I Survived books from the atop the cubbies. I survived the attacks of September 11th, 2001, he said, moving the book from the toolbox and putting it on the desk. He then lifted out a second book. I survived the Nazi invasion, 1944. He placed it on top of the first. Red, I walked up. Red, I survived Hurricane Katrina, 2005. Kept stacking books. I survived the Battle of Gettysburg, 1863. Red, I said to him again. I moved next to him. I survived the Japanese tsunami, 2011. Red, what's up? I can't, he said without looking up. I can. It's too much, too much. I survived the San Francisco earthquake, 1906. What is? I placed my hand on his back. What's too much? It's too much. He shook his head faster. It's too much. I can't get up in front of the class. It's too much, too much. I let out a puff. I'm sure, Red. Mr. Acevedo is cool. He won't make you get. Mr. Acevedo and Miss Ivani rushed in. I survived the sinking of the Titanic, 1912, Red continued. I survived the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 1941. Honey, what's wrong? Miss Ivani said. She stepped up to Red like only she could. It's too much, he said, without squinching his face. He started restacking the books. I survived the bombing of Pearl Harbor, 1941. I survived the San Francisco earthquake, 1906. Honey, look at me, Miss Ivani said softly. She placed a hand on the table next to the books. Everything's okay. Look at me. I survived the Japanese tsunami, 2011. He slowly looked up. Honey, everything's okay. I want you to come with me. I checked Mr. Acevedo. He took off to the side with his hands gripping his chair. Come with me to the office, okay? Miss Ivani placed her hand on the back stack of books. Come with me. Am I kicked off Clifton United? Red asked, still shaking his head and squinting. Am I kicked off Clifton United? Am I kicked off Clifton United? Honey, no, of course not, she answered. Am I kicked off Clifton United? No one's kicking you off anything, Red. Mr. Acevedo said, still held his hair. Every team needs a Blake Daniels, remember? You hear that, Red? I touched his back again. We need you on Clifton United. You're our free throw shooting machine. I can't get up in front of the class, Red said. I can't get up in front of the class. Please don't kick me off the team. No one's making you get up in front of the class, Red. Miss Giovanni glanced at Mr. Acevedo again. No one's making you do anything you don't want to, he said. I guarantee it. That was pretty intense right there. The last section today is called the H word. What could that be? Well, think about it. Do you want to look at the instructions, I said, tilting the iPad to Avery. Not really, she said. I hate getting up in front of the class. I flinched. Oh, she wiggled her fingers. I said the H word at RJE. Calm down, dude. It's not like I shouted it across the cafeteria. Oh, it's hate. That's right. We were back in room 208. It was in Melissa's seat across from Avery. After Red's episode, Mr. Acevedo decided to have the rest of the class inside. Back in the room, he explained that he'd been holding conferences while we worked on our persuasive pieces and prepared for the presentations. They're not for another 2 weeks, I said, and we only have to be in front of the class for a few minutes. I don't care if it's for a few seconds. It's getting up in front of the class. I hate getting up in front of the freaking class. I'm beginning to sense that. I slid over a blank note card and started darkening a corner. I'll do the writing assignment, Avery, I said without looking up. Huh? The persuasive essay, I'll do it. I still didn't look up. It's an olive branch. A what? Even though I couldn't see her face, I knew she was curling her lip. It's an olive branch, I said again. Whatever, dude. Oh, she's a tough one. He's trying, isn't he? He's trying. All right, well, it was fun reading with you guys again today. I hope you're having a wonderful evening with your families. Miigwech for listening, and I'll see you next time.